The reason I put the sentences that are right below this is because I know myself. It sounds completely insane, and a few people will say it's fake. Trust, there is no one on this earth that wishes it was fake more than me. If I could go back, I would go the neighbors sooner, but my reality is that I caused the death of my mom. I had to mature very early. I became like a surrogate to my sister for those last 3 years. I only wanted him to beat her up, he go to jail, and my mom get help. I never wanted her to die. First, this is a throwaway account. I will not be replying to comments. Take this as you will. This is my story of my revenge against my mother and rapist. First, our father passed away 4 years before all this started. Car crash. Maybe our lives would have been better if he hadn't died that day. Also, before I get into this, one thing you should know is, before this man came into our lives, our mother was amazing. She was loving, supportive, and put us above everything. But she would soon replace us with her new man and her new meth habit. When I was around 9 and my little sister 7, our mom started dating this man. Let's call him POS. POS was tall and weighed about 250 pounds. He had oily brown hair and a face filled with sores. I didn't like him from the start. He made me uncomfortable, to say the least. A few months after they started dating, POS moved into our house. Everything was awk for the first few weeks, I guess. Then my mom started to act funny. Staying up all night, not cooking us lunch or supper, not cleaning, snapping at us for no reason, and started hitting us. Our lives had been turned upside down by this man so quickly. Then one night he came into my bedroom, held me down and raped me. I was screaming and crying for my mom, begging her to come help me, to come save me please. And then I seen her, standing in the door watching him rape me. My mom was just letting him do this to me. She was just watching, like she was looking at a TV or something. When he finished and climbed off of me, he walked up to my mom, kissed her, and walked away with her. My mom just left me, crying and bleeding. I was just raped, and she allowed it to happen. Not long after they walked out, I hear them having sex in the living room. It was my 10th birthday. Happy birthday to me. A couple of nights later, I hear my little sister crying. I get out the bed to find my mom standing in her doorway. I run to the room to try to help her, and my mom sees me. She backhands me across the face, making me slam against the hallway wall. I can hear my sister crying and begging, with no one coming to help her. That day, that was the day, I started hating my mother. The rape and abuse went on for 3 years. I didn't know at the beginning, but soon found out POS had gotten my mom using meth. POS and meth were the only important things in her life. My sister and I were nothing more than his play toys. I soon started noticing them arguing more and more about who got more hits. This one was stashing from the other one, and you smoke the last of it all by yourself. This is when I started planning my revenge. I noticed after about 3 days, they would finally pass out, and would sleep for almost 2. And their bag of meth would always be on the bedside table, beside POS. I know most would ask, why didn't you call the police or child welfare? Because jail wasn't enough. He might have raped us, but she betrayed us. She turned her back on us. And I wanted revenge, and wanted her to suffer like we had. So every chance I got, I would move the bag, just at first, make it look tampered with. Then I started taking it from the bag and placing some on my mom's table. These things alone cause a lot of fighting. They started getting physical. I would keep my sister and I out of sight when this went on, and they never lasted long. Well, I continued to do this over a couple of months, taking more and more, flushing it, or dropping it down the sink, until the last day. The last day I took the whole bag. It was a good amount. They had just re-uked, like they would say. I flushed the whole bag, and locked my sister and I in my room, and quietly prayed that they didn't realize it was me. I am not sure how long after I did this that everything started, But we had watched like 3 Disney movies before they finally woke up. And then I heard him start yelling about his missing bag. The yelling got louder and more intense. Then I heard the breaking of objects. It was starting to getting bad now. I hear my mom go from angry to scared. I hear him hitting her begging him to stop, swearing she didn't touch it. He continues to hit, and she continues to beg, begging him to stop hurting her, begging someone to come help her, begging like we begged her for so many nights. My sister started asking to leave. She was scared and crying. I opened my window, put my sister outside, and followed. We ran to the neighbors and told them that POS was beating our mom. The neighbor called the police and brought us inside. And we watched as the police pulled up to our house, start to walk up to the door, stop for a second, and then started yelling police and kicked the door open. After what felt like forever, we see POS being brought out to the police car. I wait to see my mom follow, but she doesn't. I see an ambulance pull up and the paramedics run in a gurney. A short time later, I see them rushing back with my mom. I catch a glimpse of her once beautiful face, now looking like ground meat. Her face was solid red, covered in blood. She ended up dying on the way to the hospital. I never planned to have my mother killed. I just wanted her to feel the pain we had been feeling for these last years. And I guess in the end she did. She felt the pain and terror we felt every night for the last 3 years. She just felt it all in one night. Do I feel bad about what I did? No, I don't. If I didn't do what I did, we would have been stuck there, being raped and beaten every day until one of us would have died. POS was convicted of second-degree murder, possession of drug paraphernalia. I flushed the actual drugs, child pornography, pictures of us, and 23 counts of aggravated rape and 17 counts of aggravated rape against a person under 12 years of age. That last one is a death sentence where this all happened. We moved a few states over to be with our dad's parents. We hadn't seen them in almost 4 years, and for the first time in a long time, we actually felt safe. My sister, still to this day, doesn't know what I did, doesn't know that I played a big part in our mom's death. And since we never talk about either of them, it never comes up. We are both happily married now. I have 3 children. She has 2. Both of us are active members of our PTA. No one looking at us today would ever guess the hell we went through, or what I did to get us out of it.
Next story.
Just a little background to start off. I was an exterminator for better than a decade and was only a few credits shy of a degree in entomology. Needless to say, I know my stuff when it comes to anything one might consider creepy and slash or crawly. With all this being said, I was a specialist for the absolute worst kinds of infestations. I treated for bedbugs, small cousins to ticks that only drink human blood. I bet you think you know where this is going. And just to cut you off, no, I never intentionally infested anyone. In fact, the revenge in this story isn't even for me. It was for what turned out to be one of the sweetest women I have ever met. For the purpose of the story, we are going to call her Mary. She was a nurse in World War II. I was called out to Mary's home by the management of the subsidized apartments. She had complained about a small bug issue. What I found when I got there was not a small bug issue, and still haunts me a little to this day. When Mary answered the door, she was covered in bedbugs, her hair, her clothes, even crawling on her hands. Without going into too much grisly detail about insect biology, this isn't normal. Bedbugs don't like touching human skin, and they don't hunt when people are up and moving. That is why the bed is the most prevalent place to find them, and thus the name. I immediately called an ambulance, waited on them to arrive, and warned them about the very real possibility that anywhere they took her would be in severe danger of being infested if they didn't do something to decontaminate her. The poor woman was suffering from anemia, and it was luck of biology that she hadn't gone into toxic shock from the number of bites she had received. When she was rushed off, after having to be hosed off, literally sprayed with a hose, and having her clothes taken from her in semi-private, revenge mode started. Bedbug treatments are expensive, very expensive, and I had made a lot of contacts with local Department of Social Services and the Adult Protective Services because of the amount of charity of work I had done. Every single one of them got a phone call. Subsidized apartments have rules, including that they have to make routine checks. For an infestation to get to that level, it had gone unchecked for years. She had been being eaten alive for years. I called the local news, warned every neighbor, and collected statements about exactly how often the maintenance staff and management had entered the apartments. Once DSS and APS was done, I urged every single person who was put in jeopardy of infestation to file civil suits and recommended a lawyer I had done some work for in the past. He was more than happy to take the cases as a class action suit. By the end, I had the manager of the apartments arrested for elderly abuse and neglect, and the entire staff from the top down fired. They had been falsifying paperwork saying they had been inside the apartments, performing routine maintenance, and generally scamming the government for services they didn't actually provide. I visited Mary for a while after that, checking in since it didn't seem anyone else had in a long time. She was a wonderful person, and she never deserved to have to live like that. Her health recovered for a while, but time eventually came for her. I'll never forget her, or forgive the people that allowed it to happen in the first place.
Next story.
So I recently discovered this sub and had a personal story to share. On mobile, so forgive formatting /grammar /etc. story is several years old. I've always been the black sheep of the family. Cousins grew up to be doctors, professors, creatives, and whatever else. Meanwhile, I've managed to just make a humble, stable passive income through some business decisions. Nothing fancy, but I can afford a one-bedroom in Nike and live comfortably with that, and a part-time job in a cafe. Everyone in the family, including my own parents, judge me harshly for not pushing myself to do what my cousins do, especially my one cousin we will call Randy. Think the stereotypical dude bro who got rich thanks to working for his dad. Multiply that by 10. And you got Randy. Anyway, he always gave me the most shit. And eventually I just tuned them out cause I get to enjoy my life with my work part-time, and still afford what I want. So, to cut the bullshit short, Randy has a wife and 2 kids. He also had a mistress. I found this out cause one day when I was walking through the city when I saw him walking down the street with a woman who clearly wasn't his wife, arms around each other. I checked Facebook and saw he had indeed posted about visiting a bagel shop in the city while on a business trip that morning, so we had indeed in the city. So I decided, fuck it, let me see how this plays out. I followed them for 5 hours, snapped several photos, one of them going into a hotel together. I held on to these and waited until Christmas that year. About 6 months later, I decided to unceremoniously drop printed photos in front of everyone at the table before dinner and made sure to get his wife to see them. Cue screaming and fighting. I actually got a black eye out of it. It was Randy's dad who did it though, not him. Cue police. A lot of questioning. My and I get kicked out. We head back home after talking to the cops one last time. The aftermath. Besides Randy's wife and another cousin who hates Randy, my family cut me off entirely for several years. Whatever, even my parents had always expressed disappointment in me for not applying myself fully, so no real loss there. Randy got divorced. Lost full custody of the kids after threatening his ex. Family occasionally tries to guilt me into apologizing, but my response is some variation of not gonna apologize for outing a cheating cunt, and I'm promptly blocked for another few months. And Randy's ex-wife are good friends, and the kids call me uncle. Nick having a family who actually loves me unconditionally for once. And I got married, and that's when my family last tried to get into contact with me, and were actually nice for once. Seeing me moving on, I guess, eats at the mick. Maybe realizing their punching bag is gone for good. That's it really. Living my best life now with a good family as opposed to a shit one. Edit. First, thanks for support and awards. Second, a bunch of y'all seem to think being abused is not traumatic or bad, as several comments seem to be saying, wow, you're a bad person for having a negative reaction to abuse and not handling it like a golden human being. So I'll clarify. The comments about my wasted potential weren't just, oh, your cousin's a doctor, what about you? They were, I can't believe Randy just sealed a deal for X amount of dollars. Are you still working at that shitty cafe? Are you still saying what's her name? The girl with the pudgy stomach. Aren't you ever gonna do anything with your life? I'd feel so worthless living like that. Those are the nicer ones. The worst ones include being told that it's better I didn't try as I wouldn't amount to anything, and other such things along those lines, as I really don't care to remember the more toxic lines. I'm not interested in judgment. Go post on Ada threads if you want to say your piece about that. But don't fucking tell me that I wasn't an abuse victim and wasn't treated horribly by my own family just cause I didn't spell out the nitty-gritty details.
Next story.